Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Assistance Center webinar series. Tonight's webinar will be on podcast 101. A member from the Miller Business Resource Center is here to present it. His name is Sal. I'm going to do a little house cleaning before we get started. Questions on the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, or you're more than welcome to raise your hand and Sal will jump in and get your question answered. And I will let Sal know the questions that are in the chat and Q&A. Also, if we get any questions on Facebook, I will also put them in the chat. Thank you, Sal. You can get started.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Great. Well, good evening, everyone. And once again, my name is Sal DiVincenzo. A copy of this presentation is at the link on this first slide here. And also I put it in the chat as well, so you can download it for safekeeping for later. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Podcasting 101. This is meant to be an introduction to podcasting. To give you just a brief background of myself, I am a business librarian at the Middle Country Public Library's Miller Business Center. And I'm also the co-host of the library's podcast, the Middle Country Public Library podcast. We have just entered our 5th year and our 270th episode. We do a weekly podcast about the things that are happening at the library, in addition to other things and just being silly in general. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But again, if you have any questions, this is very informal. So please post them in the chat or Q&A and you can interrupt and I'll be happy to answer anything as we go along. So before we jump into the basics of podcasting, I do want to mention some statistics because I am a information geek and we do like to talk about statistics. And we're going to really quickly go over these. I mean, you probably can guess what this is going to tell you, but the percentage of consumers who have ever listened to audio podcasts in the United States has been increasing almost exponentially since they started taking this data. This is Edison Research. Since 2006, you could see it's gone from 11 to 62%. I mean, 62% of consumers have listened to at least one podcast in the US. And as far as the number of podcast listeners in the United States from 2017 to 2024, so this is a little bit of a projection, by next year, there'll be over 100 million. So it's almost a third of the US population will have podcast listeners, which is pretty remarkable and just goes to show you the potential market that there is out there if you're interested in starting your own podcast. And money is to be made. It's not easy, and we'll talk about monetization towards the end of this presentation. But as far as advertising that is spent on podcasting, between 2024 and 2026, you're seeing a nice increase there. It's 3.7 billion in 24, 4 billion in 25, and 4.2 billion in 2026. And this data comes from Statista, which is one of the databases that we have here at the Miller Business Center. And if you become a free member of the Miller Business Center, you'll be able to come down to the library and access this database. The most popular podcast platforms in the US, this was 2020, but it's probably, the numbers might have gone up a little bit on the top end here, maybe down a little bit on the bottom end, but they're pretty much the same. Spotify and Apple and Google and Pandora are the top 4. You'd be surprised how many people listen to our podcast from our website, but that does happen from time to time. So you'll see that's 11% here. And, you know, Audible is getting into the podcasting realm. That's Amazon's service, as well as YouTube now is getting into the podcasting business because, again, they want to make money and there's money to be made with that. So So you can see here that the popular four are Spotify, Apple, Google, and Pandora. So you have an idea for a podcast. Well, you need to think about a few things before you just hit the record button. And some of these are obvious, and other ones I hope that I'll let you know. I'll teach you something that you didn't know before. Maybe get your brain working, and you'll have an idea. So, what will your show be about? You want to define your subject and define your scope. We suggest that you start simple. And I will say this at the end of the presentation, and I will say this now. It's also okay to start ugly, meaning your first few episodes of your podcast, your first year of your podcast, does not have to be an amazing production worthy of a Grammy Award. You can start ugly and start with a simple setup with an iPhone and just get started. But you have to start. That's the whole point, is don't worry about starting, just do it. You want to think about your format, your length, and your tone. Is your show an interview show? Is it conversational? Is it a solo show, just you recording and speaking to the camera or into the microphone? Or perhaps you want to tell a story or tell other people's stories. Is your show going to be weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly? We here at the library have a weekly show. Frankly, I don't think I would do anything less than bi-weekly. I'm sure you're going to find some monthly podcasts out there on the services, but I think with today's a short attention span and how quickly things change and how how dynamic this industry is, I think at least every other week is probably your best bet. And we're going to talk in a moment. You don't have to record every other week. You can set things up and schedule things for every other week and work that out and manage your time. Is your show educational? Is it entertainment? Is it instructional? And is it short subject or long form? The average commute time on Long Island is about 33 minutes. Our show here at the library runs between 18 and 23 minutes. So do you want your show to sit inside that commute time on Long Island, that average commute time? Or do you want your show to be like probably one of the top, if not the top podcasters out there, Joe Rogan, who does, 2.5, 3 hour long, 3 hour shows. So you want to think about that. Who is your audience and what is your goal? If you have a business, are you driving your audience to your business? If you are an educator, are you doing something to educate your listeners? Most of you here are business owners or you're, budding entrepreneurs. So your podcast is going to be to drive people to your business, either to drive them to your website or to educate them on what you do, provide them with something that they can take away, and then create a relationship with them. So this way you convert them from a listener into a customer. And also marketing. How will you market your podcast? There are many different ways to market your podcast. You need to think about that, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the presentation. So before we get started here, we need to learn some of the lingo. Some of this you might have heard of, some of this you might not have heard of. So let's go over this. So there's 3 steps here to getting your podcast out there. There's capturing your content, there's editing and producing your show, and there's the publishing and the distribution. That's getting the show out there for people to consume. So when we're capturing your content, you're going to need things to record, and that's recording equipment. So you'll hear things you've heard before, like microphone, mixing board. You might not have heard of all-in-one, but that we'll look at in a moment, and smartphone. You also might hear something called DAW, DAW. That stands for Digital Audio Workstation. That's the software that you would use to edit your show. And then finally, hosting and feed management. Now, when I first started podcasting, I thought that we would send our podcast to Apple. Apple would receive it. They would take it. They would put it on their server, and then they would distribute it out to everyone. And that's actually not how it works. You need to have a host, or you need to have a spot on the web and in the cloud, on the internet, however you want to say it. You need to have it sit somewhere and be available for these distribution systems like Apple and Google and Pandora to grab it and then serve it to the user on the other end. So we'll talk about that as well. So recording equipment. Well, all of you probably already have your simple starting recording equipment. That's your cell phone. You'd be surprised how well an Android or a iPhone does at recording audio. And while many of your devices already come with pre-installed apps that will help you record audio, there are apps out there that will not only help you record audio, but also edit the audio right inside your phone. So that's your first, you all are ready to go at this point if you have a smartphone. The second image here is a USB microphone. And a USB microphone is a kind of a standalone mic that doesn't require an amplifier or a preamp. You plug it directly into your computer, and it's a digital audio process in which it converts. The conversion happens on board. It's got a chip, and then it goes straight into your computer, and then you record your show on your computer. So you're on your laptop or on your desktop. So you just plug it in and you're ready to go. It's pretty much plug and play. This fourth image here is what we use here at the library. For our podcast, this is the Rodecaster Pro. This particular model is the Model 1. There is also now a Model 2, which is a little fancier, but they both do the same thing. Now, this, believe it or not, is an all-in-one in the sense that I can plug, or you can plug an mini SD card into the back of this unit, and you can record right from this unit and mix the audio down right from this unit. It multi-track records to the 4 channels. You can plug in 4 microphones. Those pads that you see there, those squares, they light up, and you can load up to 16 audio files in those pads. So you can do your theme music, your outro music, your commercials, if you're going to have commercials. You can record all that ahead of time, load that in there. And all you have to do is just slide that slider up, hit the button, and it will play the audio for you. You can also see about halfway through there, you can use your telephone or Bluetooth as well into the board. So you can do telephone interviews using this. So technically, this can be used for remote recording. It is a little clunky and big, but you can technically set this up. You can place this on a table, plug in your microphones, plug in your headphones. It's got a headphone amp built in, and it also has the Aphex audio processing on board. And if you're listening to me now, which you probably are, you're listening to me through our Rodecaster Pro, because I'm actually doing this, the audio of the webinar, through the Rodecaster Pro. This last item that you see here is it's the new version of the old mini tape recording systems for those of you who might have grown up with those. But this is a Tascam digital audio recorder. It is a stereo audio recorder. And what's nice about this is it's pretty lightweight. It's compact. Many journalists use this because it is a high quality digital audio, and the microphones are a little better. Well, maybe a lot better than the microphones that you might have on your smartphone. So you can use this to record. You can't edit from this, but it is a digital file. So you'd plug this into a computer, download it, and then be able to manipulate it with a digital audio workstation. Getting really quickly back to the phones, there are many microphones that you can plug into your phones to get a better quality, rather than just the microphone that's built into your phone. I will say, though, it works pretty well. We've actually recorded episodes using our cell phones. We recorded a whole episode actually of the library podcast at the airport. We were coming back from a conference on my iPhone. I uploaded the audio to my laptop and I edited the episode on the flight home. And by the time I landed, we had our 25-minute episode for that week. So it's all possible to do it with all these different things. Different ranges of pricing as well, obviously. A USB microphone is probably going to run you $100 or less for a decent one, maybe a little more for a more robust microphone. The Rodecaster Pro or things similar to the Rodecaster Pro are going to be in the $500 to $700 range. And that Tascam recorder is also going to be in the $100 to $200 range, again, for a decent unit. So that's recording. And now we're using the software to edit. And we do highly recommend that you use software to edit your podcast. It makes it much easier to add things. If you're an interview podcast and perhaps you do the interview on a different day, you're not recording your whole show live. You can do an intro, you can insert your interview with the person that you're interviewing in the middle, and then do an outro and edit that in as bumpers. You can add commercials, you can add anything that you want with the digital audio workstation. And of course, we all make mistakes. We all might, have a pregnant pause that we want to get rid of, or we say, or, or we have a little tick that we repeat when we're nervous or not prepared. The digital audio workstation software is where you would remove that. Now you can see some here listed here. These are just a few. We here at the library use Hindenburg, which, and the reason why we use Hindenburg, besides being very, very user-friendly, it has something called non-destructive editing, which means that I can delete a section of audio from my file from the show as I'm working on it. But if for some reason I've made a mistake or for some reason I want to get it back, it's never gone. It's still there. I can actually open up the waveform and kind of drag it back out again. So sometimes I'm editing and perhaps someone finishes a sentence and I cut it a little too soon and I miss the S at the end of the word or something like that. Even though I've deleted it, I can actually very gently pull that audio out and get the last S from that word. It does that. It has a little bit of AI. Everything has a little bit of AI nowadays, but it has a little bit of AI rolled in there as well. It also, which makes it much easier to edit audio, as well as, like I said, it's very user-friendly. And it also has some broadcast quality production tools on there, like auto leveling. So if you have multiple microphones and maybe one microphone's a little louder than the other, you can hit a button after the fact and it will automatically level all the audio. So one person isn't yelling over the other people. So it's a good piece of software, and that's the reason why we use it. There is a cost involved with that, but that's the reason why we used it here at the podcast. If you have a Mac, you already have podcasting software. It's called GarageBand. Works very, very well. Is not a super robust, feature-rich piece of software, but is definitely, usable. Definitely get you started. Not a problem. If you have a PC, you can download for free Audacity. Now, I like Audacity. We used Audacity for the first year of our podcast. My only complaint about Audacity, it's a powerful tool. It is open source, and the learning curve on that one could be a little long if you're not too savvy with software. It's got a ton of plugins. It's a little clunky. This is a personal opinion, a little clunky on the interface. But it is free and it does do the job. So if you have a Mac, you already have GarageBand. If you have a PC, I recommend downloading Audacity. If you do want to spend some money, Hindenburg for me would be the way to go, but also works very well. Our software is Audition, which is an Adobe product, Logic Pro is an Apple product, and Twister Wave is also another digital audio workstation. So you record with your recording device and you edit with your software. Now, if you're doing remote recording, which became incredibly popular during the pandemic, and I will say very proudly that we did not miss a beat here at the library, even though we closed down. We continued recording the podcast using a piece of software that you see here on the screen called Squadcast. And what that allowed us to do was that allowed us, each of us, the three of us, we're a threesome for the show, to be in our homes at our computers with our microphones, recording the podcast live. We could see each other, kind of like Zoom. We could see each other. But what's nice about remote recording in many cases, and not all of the software pieces that you see here do this, but most of them do, is that it records the audio locally and then uploads it to the web, which means that you do not have that swishy Zoom sound happening with your recordings. And what's also great about that is a multi-track system, which means that when my co-host Sarah's dogs started barking, I can mute her in post-production and bring her back when the dogs stopped barking. But Squadcast is a good piece of software, and this works out very well if you do want to do interviews, or if you have a podcasting partner who can't come to where you are, if you don't have a physical studio to meet together. You can record that at your respective locations and then edit it afterwards. Additionally, if you were doing a meeting like we're doing now, so all the audio, this webinar is being recorded. So the audio is being recorded. We can take that file, that MP3 file, and we can use that and edit that as our audio. So that is a remote recording thing. There is a question here in the Q&A. I've been using a mic and recording into GarageBand. Am I missing something in terms of sound quality by doing it in this way? Well, I guess my question is your sound quality not sound good? Because if it doesn't sound good, it's probably not because of anything that you're doing. It's just something, it's maybe perhaps your equipment. We've used GarageBand as well to record episodes, especially when we're not in the building. I use my MacBook and a microphone. That's basically what you should be doing. You want to make sure this, though. What I notice happens sometimes with GarageBand is you start your recording and it appears as if you're recording using your microphone, but it's not the input. It's actually not the input. You're actually recording from the built-in microphone on the Mac. So just make sure in GarageBand on the left-hand side on your track, you'll have an input indicator, and it should say the microphone that is plugged in if you have a USB microphone. If it doesn't, then you have to go up to settings and make sure that the input is okay. You make sure to use the input mic. Okay. So are you having a an audio issue? Is it not sounding clear to you, or is it just not, you're just not happy with the overall quality? Because I'm curious if perhaps you might need another microphone, but yes, that should be the way to do it, is to plug the microphone directly into the computer through USB. Sound quality is okay for a beginner. Maybe the levels are a bit loud. Okay. Yeah. You know what? Like I said, you want to start ugly, if it's okay. Our whole first year at the library, we were recording with just a mixing board I found in a closet and DJ microphones that they were using for like programming here. It sounded awful. I mean, we had an electrical buzz that I cringe every time I listen to episode. I think it was episode 54, 55. We went to the Roadcaster. When I listened to the earlier episodes, it was terrible. But we did it. We did over a year that way. But the only other thing that I would think, if you want to bump up your audio a little bit, just a little bit of a tip or trick or advice, is consider getting maybe a regular microphone, not so much a USB microphone. So an XLR microphone. So that's the microphones that have the 3 pins, and get something like a USB. I call them breakout boxes, but it's pretty much a preamp. And a lot of those have the signal processing built in. It gives you a little more of a warm sound to your voice. It like bulks it up a little bit. And that has the individual gain controls on it. And I think that might get you a little better sound quality on that into your Mac. And I recommend Focusrite, Focusrite. Their Scarlett series, very affordable and a really quality sound coming from those. So I'm going to have my email at the end. So if you want to get a little deeper into this, I will talk your ear off about audio stuff. So we can definitely chat if you want to talk about your equipment. And if it's a laptop that you're working with, I invite you to make an appointment to come down to the library with your laptop and your microphone, and we'll do something here and we'll check it out and see if we can make it sound better. Okay, let's get back to this. So we have video. Video is huge. We are about to go to video. Well, within the next month or so, our podcast is going to go to video. And the thing that's really what I feel is important about video is it adds the value to your audio podcast. And it also adds your ability to repurpose content cross other platforms. So, what's big right now? For this very moment, April 13th at 7:30 p.m., TikTok is huge. I don't know what it's going to be a week from now or a year from now, but TikTok is huge. And not taking over, but challenging TikTok is YouTube Shorts. And if you had an audio podcast only, you really can't use that YouTube Short concept with your audio. Okay, maybe you can, but it's not going to be as powerful. It's not going to provide you with that marketing tool to send people to your business or to your podcast. So recording video and audio simultaneously really will come in handy if you're comfortable with that. So this gentleman here on the left-hand side of your screen, he's just recording right into his Mac, and he's probably using his webcam, kind of a solo show, looking straight into the camera. If I were to turn my camera back on, kind of like me talking here, this would be me doing the podcast. I have my microphone here. I got my board over here. I'm looking at the camera. I'm talking, and it's my whole podcast is the headshot here. So you can do that, or you can get fancy like these gentlemen here, and have multiple cameras. You don't need multiple cameras, but you could do multiple cameras and have a set and have the whole thing like that. So yes, I do think that to start, you definitely want to start with obviously audio, but consider moving to the video as well. And what's nice about this is that, it's not like you're doing double work, because you're probably going to edit your video first and then strip the audio from that and then post the audio that way. That is not a 101 program. That's like a 202 or a 303 program. But there is software out there that will help you do that. And it's as inexpensive as I'm saying inexpensive, but like for $299 a year, you can get software that is a licensed software that will allow you to record your podcast and your video simultaneously, edit it after the fact, or edit it live, like do live switching. And it's remarkable. And the audio quality is great and the video quality is great. And you can do it using your cell phone or two cell phones. So it's really, you don't have to go crazy like this other picture. So there's different ways to do that. But again, the real benefit of this is not so people can see your face and you can, get that celebrity vibe going on. It really is the cross-platform content and repurposing it. So now you're going to YouTube, now you're going to Rumble, now you're going to Vimeo, now you're going to all these video distribution systems, Facebook video and all that kind of stuff. You're bringing it out there and you're expanding your potential reach. And also, again, you're all potential, either you're business owners or potential business owners thinking about starting businesses. Visual is king. I mean, people like that visual thing happening. And also, frankly, when you're creating that relationship with, you're creating the relationship with your potential customers or your customers, they like to see you. A lot of times they do like to see you. They like to put face with the voice, and it makes them feel good that they know you. Okay. So how do you publish? Well, most podcast distributors do not host your audio files. Okay. And again, I mentioned this before. I really thought that they did, but they don't. Okay. So what happens is you gather your content using your microphone, your iPhone, your Rodecaster Pro, whatever you decide to do, GarageBand, you edit in GarageBand or Hindenburg. Now you got a show, you got a product, and now you have an MP3 file that you want to get out there and want people to hear. Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, etc. They're all simply directories. Okay. They are only directories. You need to host your audio with a hosting provider or use a web hosting provider. Your file needs to be sitting somewhere. And those podcast directories, the Apple podcasts and the Google podcasts and so on, they need to know where it is. So podcasts are distributed via something called RSS, which is really simple syndication is what it stands for. And basically it's an XML file that is basically a telephone book, if you may, or a directory, or a list of your episodes and where they're located, like the web address, where the file is located, and the description of what the show is about. Okay. Now, using a podcast hosting company may incur the cost, and we'll talk about cost in a moment, but in many cases, it'll be a turnkey situation. Whereas posting using your own hosting and having to write the XML is not a turnkey situation. I did it for a year. It's a lot of work. It's a pain. It's copying and pasting code. If you are a web designer and you're comfortable writing code, and you have web space, then you might want to do it your own way. But for us, we wanted something simpler and something more accessible to not just a tech person like myself, but people who are not tech people, but know how to use like Microsoft Word and know how to use Facebook and that kind of thing. So turnkey situation means I log into my podcasting host, I upload my file, and I hit the post button, and it shows up on all these other services, Apple, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, so on and so forth. So this is what XML looks like. This is what it looks like. This is the header of our XML file. And I used to have to, for every show, I used to have to add on to this file. So I'd add on the next episode, episode number, episode name, episode description, so on and so forth. Okay. This, again, if you're a programmer, if you're comfortable with coding and you have web space already, this will work for you. You won't be able to necessarily schedule your podcasts, which is an issue for some people. But if you can put this up and let it rip. We use the hosting dashboard of our hosting company, which is Podbean. I am not I'm not vouching for anything. You must do your due diligence and your research when it comes to picking a hosting company. But we go with Podbean, and the reason why we went with Podbean is because they do offer an affordable product hosting package for a non-for-profit, which is what we are. Okay, and this is what the hosting dashboard looks like. I log into my account, I click new episode, I click choose a file to upload. I select our latest episode as an MP3 file. I write the title. You can see the description here. There's the bold, the italics, the color, the whole thing. It's just like Microsoft Word. And then if I want to post it to Facebook or Twitter or Tumblr or LinkedIn or YouTube or WordPress or whatever, I just have to click one of those 6 buttons there, and it'll automatically post for me to those social networks. And then I can also use on the lower left-hand corner, I can embed an embeddable player into my existing website. So people can go to my website, and at the very bottom, there's the player of the latest episode. It's so easy. It really is. And again, we have, the first year we didn't have much of a budget. It was proof of concept. My co-host, Sarah, wanted to do a podcast for the library, went to administration and said, can we do it? And they basically said, yeah, you can do it. Let's see how it goes. And we did it. And after a year, they were like, okay, you guys have done a weekly podcast, 25 minutes or 20 minutes a week, and it sounds pretty good and people are listening. So here's a little bit of a budget. And we have a very supportive administration. They send us to the podcasting conferences, and when we need something, they get it for us, and we greatly appreciate that. So this is what we went with. We went with Podbean. There are a number of podcast hosting companies out there, in addition to, like I said, hosting it yourself if you already have web space. And there's different levels of services. So Podbean has fair analytics. It's very fair. It's acceptable for a library. But if you want to go a little deeper, you want to see exactly where someone's listening, how long they're listening, what parts of the episodes are listening, something like Blueberry or Buzzsprout, they have maybe a little more deeper analytics to see where people are coming from, where they're listening, how they're listening, that's so on and so forth. We have a question in the Q&A. I've been publishing my episodes to a WordPress website that I built. Great. Hosted through Bluehost. Excellent. I was thinking that I would eventually post the full season to Spotify, but from what you're saying, I'm already hosting the files. Yes, you're already hosting the files. So you would not post the entire season to Spotify. You would basically just turn on, after you're done with your full season, you would submit your podcast to Spotify by giving them your podcast feed address. There's a little bit of a process. You just fill out some web form, and then they will, I don't know if it's an actual person who checks up on it or if they have a program that checks to make sure your RSS feed is in order. And there are sites out there, by the way, that you can do an RSS feed checker to make sure it's got all the right syntax. And then once that happens, and you have your, it's within the standards of Spotify or Apple, it'll just show up there one day and you'll have your show ready to go on Spotify. So yes, if you are posting it, if you're hosting it already, you are literally, I would say 2-3 days away from being on Spotify and all these other places, just going to the different services and selecting it. Let's see. Average hosting cost per month for these services is going to be about $19, as low as $9 if you're a non-for-profit, which is not terrible. It's not terrible. And this is if you pay, and you pay up front for the whole year. They'll give you a little bit of a discount. And what's nice about the podcast hosting, is that you don't have to go to Spotify and Apple and all those other services and give them that information. Uh, the host will do it on your behalf. So I did not have to go to Spotify to when we put our podcast on Spotify. I did not have to go to Spotify and fill out that form on Spotify. I just put a little check mark on our Podbean hosting account, and 3 days later it was on Spotify. So very, very easy. But wait, there's more. There's more than just the recording and the equipment and all that stuff, and the your monetary investment here. There's your commitment to this, your time. Really, I mean, we talked about money for a little bit, but there is your time. Doing a podcast isn't necessarily quick and easy. Especially if your shows are long, especially if you are a little loose with your a little loose with your structure. Like our show, we're a little conversational. We get a little silly sometimes, and I have to edit some things out to make it appropriate. So that takes time. You have to think about your logo and your branding. You have to think about, the fact that, a lot of times people will search podcast directories and not even look at the descriptions. They're looking at the logos. They're looking at the artwork. And if you've ever seen some of these directories, your poor little podcast might be lost in a sea of other podcasts. And if your logo isn't interesting, or if it doesn't stand out, then people might pass over it. So that's important. Music licensing is also important. Unless you make your own music, you're going to have to go out there and get a license or use a Creative Commons license, which basically is royalty free, but with attribution. Or you can purchase music. We purchase licenses here at the library. We want to be on the up and up and make sure that, we can't just pick somebody's song and put it on the podcast as the theme. So you have to do that. And that's where fair use and legal considerations come in. So I'm not going to get too deep into this, but obviously be smart about what you're putting out there. You would not be able to play an entire Bruce Springsteen song on your podcast and expect nothing to happen. Especially if you're posting to YouTube. If you're trying to get monetized on YouTube, or if you're posting to YouTube, they will either give you a copyright strike or demonetize you. There's a lot of issues here. So we use royalty-free music. We've paid for the license. Our theme song is just an instrumental song that we liked, and we paid for it. And that's that. We get to use it and no problems. So definitely keep that in mind. So let's take an example. Let's say, all right, I think I have an idea. Maybe I want to get started here. So we suggest, and I'm a little hypocritical here because we haven't written episode outlines in a while, but here at the podcast. But we suggest that you write an episode outline, especially your first couple of episodes, just so this way you know the path that you're going to take from the moment you hit the record button to the moment you hit it to stop. And you want to write any copy that's important to you and to your audience, which means if there's something that you want to get out there, like a store opening, or you're going to be attending a trade show, or, you're having a special on the product or service that you're selling, and you want people to know that, and you have maybe telephone numbers or website addresses or dates and times and such like that, write that down. Even though it might be in your head, once that recording starts, crazy things happen. So write any copy that is important to you and important for your audience to know, just so you have it in front of you. And you want to schedule your time appropriately. You want to schedule your time for recording, and you want to schedule your time for editing. So we do, like I said, in 20 to 22 minute show, 18 minutes. The average is 20 minutes. It takes us maybe a half hour to an hour of prep work for the show. So if we're doing research for the show for a particular topic, maybe we'll take an hour to do that. The actual recording might be a half hour to 40 minutes. That's just us kind of getting settled, asking each other, okay, what we're going to do, maybe doing a couple of segments that may work or may not work. And then editing the show, for me, editing the show takes just as long, if not maybe 50% more. So if I'm editing a 20-minute episode, it might take me 40 minutes to edit that, make sure everything sounds good, all the levels are good, music is there, edit out all the ums and the knows and the issues that I might have had there. And then writing the show notes, going to my Podbean site, posting the episode, writing whatever notes I need there. We have a blog now at the library podcast. So my co-host will go to the blog. It's an extended show notes. So it's like links to things we're talking about, book covers, videos that we talked about, all that kind of stuff. So you kind of get the idea. It's not just recording, starting, stopping, and then posting. There's a lot more involved. So you need to schedule your time appropriately. And what I recommend is that if you're going to do like a weekly show, you should schedule enough time to record 2 to 3 episodes in a sitting. I think you'll do well that way. And yes, granted, you might want to do things that are more timely. So if you're having like an event coming up where your business is going to be, like I said, at a trade show or something like that, no one has to know that you're recording that 3 weeks in advance. You can talk about it like it's happening tomorrow. Okay, no one will guess that. Okay, so definitely schedule your time appropriately. Now, if you have guests, you want to be upfront with what will be discussed. When we do interviews, it's not Maury Povich. We usually send them the questions ahead of time. And I know you're thinking, well, that kind of takes some of the spontaneity away to your show, but it really doesn't, because we're not word for word, giving them the questions necessarily. We're saying, okay, we're going to talk about this, and that. But really, the spontaneity comes from the response that they're going to give you, because you're not going to ask them for the answers. You're going to hear the answers when you ask them the questions and you're recording. But you should be upfront and tell your interview, the people that you're interviewing, what you're going to ask them, what you're going to talk about. You want to make them comfortable, because the worst thing that you'd want is for it to sound like an interrogation where they're not comfortable talking with you. And you kind of get the way I'm talking now. That's the way our show is. It's very conversational. It's just 2 people sitting in a room talking, and we just happen to be recording. So you want to explain the process ahead of time. I call this pre-flight. So I tell them, especially if they're coming into the studio, I say, okay, this is where your mouth should be, near the microphone. This is, don't grab the mic from here. If you need to move the mic, grab it from here. Try not to bang on the table. Try not to, move around too much, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So you want to explain that ahead of time. Just know what to expect. And you also want to tell them, look, if you make a mistake, if you say something that you don't like, just say it. Say, look, I don't like what I just said. Can I do that over? And give them like the whole countdown thing. Add a little space, a little pause there, so it makes it easier for you to edit. And if you are remote, make sure that their equipment is up to date, working, and compatible. So you might be on a brand new Mac Studio recording using Zoom or Squadcast, and they're on a little, Pentium PC from the late 90s. That's going to be an issue. Or we have done interviews where people are on their cell phone and they decide that they want to, drive through tunnels or go underwater, and their signal is terrible. So obviously, make sure before you interview somebody that they're ready to go and they're up to speed on all that. And they are your first advertisers. So make sure that they let people know that they're on your show, because they're going to tell people that they're on your show, that they got interviewed, and they're going to advertise, what they did. And maybe you'll get new listeners that way. So I'll tell you that as business owners, the best first interview that I think you should do if you're going to interview, is interview your best customer. Have them come down and ask them questions about, why they ended up doing what they did with you, and a little bit about something of them and how wonderful you are and how wonderful your service is or your product is. And let them tell everybody, because they'll tell two friends and they'll do sort of like that old commercial. Okay, best practices: know your equipment. Speaking into the microphone, okay, is very important. You don't want to speak far away. You want to get nice and close. You want to be comfortable with your equipment. It might take some time. I recommend, maybe recording a couple of silly shows that are really not shows, but it's just you like seeing what it sounds like and then listening back to it. Record like 10 minutes of you talking, doing a little thing, maybe reading something on a piece of paper, and then, put it on your, put it on a drive or put it on your phone or post it somewhere hidden, and then get in the car and listen to it on your way to work. Listen to the way it sounds in the car with the sound cards, or then put your AirPods on or your earphones on and listen to the way it sounds like that. Get used to that stuff. Get used to using the equipment. So this way you won't have any problems when you're finally like really digging into this and doing it. And consider using a boom stand or headset. Definitely headphones. Definitely want headphones. And a boom stand's great because it makes things much easier when you're doing stuff. You can see here, I'm just turning my video back on. I do have this boom stand here. It goes to the back of the table. I have a shock mount on my microphone. This isn't a spit guard. This is actually a pop filter. So when I say the P's, you see it's not P, terrible. So the P's are here. So you got the pop filter, and this way it's away from the table. And also the table that I'm sitting at is also separate from the table that the microphone's attached to. So stuff like this are just things that you want to think about when setting up. And recording location. So I am right now in the podcast studio, and I'm in a former closet. This was actually a closet that we took over. We took all the stuff that was being stored in here, and we ended up being in here. This is pre-video. So the reason why the walls are bare is we're getting ready to do some things with the walls. And the lighting's not on right now. I'm just using the light here, but I am in a studio that is a closet. And the reason why we did that is, besides being available, is that there's no windows, there's no outside sound. We're in the corner of a building, and it's nice and quiet. So we get a good quiet spot with little or no ambient sound. And also you want to avoid items that could cause sound issues. So rustling papers, banging tables, squeaky chairs, that kind of thing. And again, we're a little bit hypocritical telling you this, because my co-hosts are notorious for, they like to rustle their papers and open and close books while we're recording, but that's neither here nor there. Okay. The show prep is important. The more prepared you are, and the more prepared you are for your show, the less editing in post-production. So if you know your stuff ahead of time, it'll, be easier for you. So really quickly, just an example about our podcast. We're a weekly podcast, and this is our mission statement. We're meant to educate and entertain listeners with all the wonderful things that we have to offer here at the Middle Country Public Library. So our show is, so you know what we're doing, we're co-hosted. There's 3 of us all together. Conversational, it's segmented. So each of us will maybe take a 10-minute, not 10 minutes, but 8 minutes or 7 minutes of speaking about something. Our average show length is 20 minutes. We do new episodes every Thursday. We posted episode 270 this morning. And we started out very simple and worked our way up to more sophisticated equipment, like I had mentioned before. And this is what we look like. This is another shot of the studio that I'm in now with the lights on. And we have recorded on balconies at hotels, because you have to get the episodes in. And we did record after we reopened. We did record back in the studio, wearing the masks, and we did the COVID thing. So that worked out well for us. We do have, like I said, a Podbean website and a service. We have over 9,000 downloads so far. We are, as crazy as this sounds, we're in the top 10% of podcasts in the country. So we're very happy about that. And we're up there for library podcasts as well. And we have been featured in Newsday. So we're evolving into more community-based subjects, not just about the library, but about the people and places in our community. So what this means, and what the point I'm trying to make here, is it's okay to change when things need to change, and it's okay to change things. So if you're doing your show like we are for 5 years and you decide, you know what, we don't want to get stale, so maybe we should go out there in the community, and even though it's not necessarily about the library, it's in the library's community. The people that we're trying to reach out to are our patrons, and we need to change things up a little bit. So let's talk more about what's happening around the library and what the people around the library and our patrons are doing, what they might be interested in, as well as the video podcast. So this way they could see what we're talking about. Maybe we could, show them the books that we're talking about and show them the images of things that we're discussing. Marketing your podcast is very, very important. And I'll be frank here. This is my big challenge. It's very difficult for me, and we've been working on a marketing plan for some time now, and trying to find the magic formula. And for us, we're not monetized, so we're not really out there trying to make money. So it's not, for us, it's not like the priority. The priority for us is making sure that we have the right information and timely information that happens every week. But if you want to market your podcast, you need to build your audience, and you can do that through social networking, word of mouth, interviewing folks on your podcast, going out and networking with other podcasters. Believe it or not, you can really build your audience that way. And having a website that is specifically for your website, for your podcasts, such as our blog. We have a blog specifically for the podcast, but also using your website, your business's website, to drive traffic to your podcast. So it's kind of like a two-way street there. You also want to connect with your audience as well. So don't be afraid to ask for feedback. It might hurt asking for feedback, but that's the only way that we're going to get better, is if we get that potentially constructive criticism. And you also want to solicit reviews, ask people to hit the like button, ask people to comment below, ask people to interact with you and write a review on Apple or Google. If you liked what you heard today, let other people know about it, that kind of thing. And that's a very organic way of marketing your podcast. You'll also have marketing materials. So, we have a dedicated business card that we bring with us if we're going out there. We do speak at conventions, and we speak at libraries about podcasting. So we'll bring this card that you see in the right-hand side here. That's just for the podcast, with the podcast email on it. If we're doing a special episode, or every episode should be on Facebook, but we tend to save that for, because we have so much going on our Facebook page for other departments. If we're doing something special, we'll put it on Facebook. We have these bookmarks in the middle here, these double-sided bookmarks, that we will randomly put in the books that people are picking up that they've reserved. So they'll open the book up, they have a nice bookmark, and it's just, hey, look, we have a podcast, you should listen. And then, of course, flyers, and any way that you can market it more organically in this respect, definitely do it. Again, there might be some cost involved, but if you've ever used Canva before, really makes making stuff like this really easy. Now for YouTube, we just do audio on YouTube right now. YouTube does now have a podcast tab, which I recently discovered, which is nice. So they're taking podcasts and putting them on a tab, because YouTube is getting into the podcasting business, because why not? So Podbean automatically uploads the audio file to YouTube, and it just does like a generic screen where you see audio waves moving while the podcast is playing. And initially we just let it do its thing, and you would just see that it would be the logo of the podcast and then these audio waves. And I realized it didn't look very good compared to all of our other videos on our YouTube page. So I started thumbnailing and making custom thumbnails for our um, our episodes, and I saw a 50% increase in click rate. So having a nice thumbnail on YouTube, it also could help. So definitely market your podcast. Think about, your thumbnails, and again, I saw a really great increase in that. And these are all, again, I use Canva to do this. So it's pretty quick. Now, this last part, we're going to talk about monetization, because besides your own businesses, maybe you can make some money doing your podcast, right? Okay. So we all love to make money on our podcast, but the real question is, are you ready to make money? And when I mean, are you ready to make money? I'm like, are you ready to receive the funds? No. This is, are you in a position as a podcaster, as your show, as, downloads and click-throughs and all that kind of stuff? Are you ready to make that monetization work for you? So the first type of monetization is advertising. That's letting advertisers advertise on your podcast. Okay. So you can do host reads, you can do programmatic advertising, or you can advertise on YouTube using their monetization program. But these all will not work unless you have a high download rate, excuse me. YouTube advertising requires at least 1,000 subscribers in order to turn that switch on. And you're not going to make meaningful money on YouTube without having over 10,000 views. And the more listeners, the better chance for higher ad revenue. So host read would be, maybe you have a show the show could still be about your business. But maybe you have like a parallel business who wants to advertise on your show. You can do, or maybe your business is going to be podcasting, your podcast. So you can do the host read, which is you are actually reading an advertisement during your show. Okay. So this you can do without having to do any production. You could just have the copy in front of you and you can read it, and you can charge somebody for doing that. And it's kind of like saying at the beginning, today's episode is sponsored by, NordVPN or Surfshark VPN or Travelocity or whatever. Or you can do programmatic advertising, what I call programmatic advertising, which means the advertising is part of the program, which means that you are talking about something specific, and maybe you're going to advertise what you're offering, and you can be talking about something, and then in the middle you say, if you like what I'm talking about, we have this. And if you visit this website and click on this link, you can get 10% off. Or maybe you are talking about something and you have a advertiser who wants to advertise on your show, and you can make the advertisement part of what you're talking about. So that's kind of what I mean by that, adding the advertising into your program. It's kind of like having a Coca-Cola can in the shot of a movie. Coca-Cola will pay to have the can in the movie. So have your advertiser pay for them to be part of the subject of your show that week. And of course, on YouTube, like I said, it is a switch, quote unquote. It's something that you can click when you enter the YouTube advertising part of it. You turn on monetization. If you have enough downloads and enough views, you'll get paid. Another way of making money are sponsorships. And this is probably the more comfortable thing here. You can have referrals and sponsorships. So a referral would be, visit this website, nordvpn.com/my podcast name for 10% off, in 3 months for free. And they pay you to say that. And what's nice about this is that you don't need minimum number of downloads. You just need I'm trying to find the right word here, but you need the advertiser to have your back and know that you're going to do good for them. because you might not have like all those downloads, but they're going to want some sort of return on their investment. So that's where that URL sharing and offer codes comes in. So you could say, use this offer code, and then you can get a discount on such and such. And, the sponsor is usually acknowledged as the sponsor by the host. And I mentioned that before. And then you might have cross promotion to your social media. So on Twitter or on Facebook, you'll say, thank you for this week's sponsor of the show, NordVPN. Visit their website for this such and such. And the brand should be complimentary. You definitely don't want a competitor advertising, that's for sure. And you want it to make sense, because people will get turned off if you have something that doesn't make sense as an advertiser. And then there's membership. Now, this has become increasingly popular, especially with YouTubers who are doing vlogs, but it's also eventually going to be very popular with podcasts, because Apple is pushing for this membership model. And that you should have at least 500 downloads per episode for this to work. And you really should have more content to offer in addition to your main show. So something like Patreon is a service that allows people who subscribe to your podcast for free to pay something every month to get something extra. And that something extra might be access to you. That something extra might be you, doing a 10-minute Zoom with them, or a one-on-one or a consultation, or helping them with their business, or helping them with their home, or helping them with something. And they're paying you on a monthly basis to get access to something extra. And with this, community engagement is very important, and it can be beneficial. So having, for example, a members only forum for your podcast. So yeah, someone could go to YouTube, or someone can go to Podbean or Spotify and comment on your podcast. But if they're a Patreon, or if they, subscribe to your supporting cast, you have a forum that you can go to. And not only can you discuss things that can't be discussed in public forums, but you as the podcast host is going to be more involved. That's going to be a more personal thing, and you can make money that way. Okay. So again, this is meant to be just an introduction. You can dig a little deeper into these if you want to, but what it all comes down to is you really need to have your show in order. You need to be established, and you need to have the downloads to make this work. Okay, another question. Do you have sponsors who support your work? I have a strong concept and lots of ideas about how to monetize, but my audience is small. So if you're asking if the library has sponsors, no, because we're really not here to make money. We are here to be a value added product for our patrons. And so we don't have any sponsors. Does that mean that does that mean that we'll never have sponsors? No, that doesn't mean that. Someday, maybe we will open it up to sponsorships, but it's got to be a sponsorship that, something that's going to benefit our listeners, not just us, because we are a non-for-profit. We are a public library. So yeah, we don't have sponsors. And I'm just kind of talking off the cuff here. I mean, if we were to have sponsors, it would be like the Friends of the Library or something like that, who would maybe want to sponsor a show or something. And the whole point of it is to draw people to become a member of the Friends of the Library, or to draw people to want to donate to the library's foundation or something like that. So no, yeah, when you have a small audience, yeah, it's tough. It really is tough. So the goal is to build your audience and to get it to a point where you can go to somebody. And also, everything is relative here. So this last week we had 200 downloads, 200 individual downloads this last week, which is up from our usual, but we're growing at this point, and it's taken 5 years to get to that point. But 200 for us is amazing. It's awesome. But you know what? 30 for us is awesome too. And we look at it this way. If we were to have a library program and we were doing like a webinar or we do something and 30 people showed up, that's a success in the library world. 10 showing up is a success in the library world. So having 10 downloads for us relative is great. So 200 is amazing. So it's the same for you. You don't have to have 1,000 downloads. You have to have, people who are going to make a difference for your business and you want to touch the people who you're going to make a difference in your community. So it's very important to think about that. I have 6 episodes and an audience of about 150 listeners. That's fantastic. 150 listeners. You should be proud of that. That's great. That is fantastic. Keep it up. That is fantastic. Look, this is how it is. We go to a conference every year in Orlando. It's called PodFest. I'll talk about conferences in a little bit. We go to conferences every year, and at that conference, there's about 2,000 to 2,500 people who attend that conference, and they're, 95% of them are podcasters. Of that group of 2,500 who come, I would say maybe 5% or 10% are legitimate millionaires making the big dough. Okay. And these are podcasters who you probably have never heard of. Okay. And up until we were going, we didn't hear of them. Now we know who they are. Okay. And now that we're aware of them, I can go online and see, okay, this guy's interviewing, people from Shark Tank and business owners and CEOs and stuff like that. So I get it. Okay. But I wouldn't have known it before we had gone to PodFest. So 10% of those folks are making the big bucks. Okay. Where we all, look, we all want to make big bucks. But the other, let's say, and then maybe 10% are not podcasters yet, but they want to be podcasters. Okay, so that's 20% there. We got the 10% millionaires, the 10% not making anything. The other 80% that come to this thing are podcasters who are making a living. They're not millionaires. They're not struggling. They're making a living on their podcast. And really, it's a really heartening thing to see. Because like I said, you would go here and you would not recognize any of these people, but, they're making enough money to live and to do their thing. Now, is it their second job? Perhaps, but they're doing it. So again, it's all relative. So hats off to you. If you have 150 listeners, it's great. If you have 30 listeners, that's great. If you can touch 10 people, if you can reach out to 10 people and they come back every single week, okay, just imagine that. Just 10 people is not a lot, right? In the grand scheme of things. But imagine 10 people coming to sit down and listen to you speak for 30 minutes a week. That you should be very proud of that. That's fantastic. Okay. And again, if this is something that you're to push people, that's 10 potential customers, that could support you. Merch and events. Let's say you do get to the point where, you have the opportunity to sell merchandise or to go to events. That works best with an engaged audience. So if you have people who really like you and they want to wear your shirt that has your podcast name on it, then definitely go for it. There isn't a cost, an upfront cost involved here. You have to lay out some money. You want to make sure you must weigh the cost to the profit on the items. So whoever you go with to get your promotional items, make sure you're going to make money on those promotional items when you sell them. And also speaking opportunities, we like I said, we've each been invited on other people's podcasts to talk. And we've also spoken at library conferences and such. And it's great because you should see the nice little bumps that we get. We get a nice little bump after PodFest. We get a nice little bump after we talk at the New York Library Association conference because people subscribe to us. So stuff like that is going to help. Meet and greet. All right. So podcasting conferences. So like I said, there's the Podfest, there's Podcast Movement, Independent Podcast Conference, She Podcasts Live. There's all these different podcasts. You can look them up. There's some in New York City. I don't think there's anything on the island, but there's definitely some in the city. And of course, you're going to have in the major cities like Los Angeles and Atlanta and Orlando and all that kind of stuff. But if you can afford it, at least go to one. If you can go to the local one, because it's great to see other podcasters that are where you are, and it makes you feel good, because we're all in this together. And also to see, like I said, podcasters who are not millionaires but are making a living and finding out what they're doing and how they're doing it. And there's a lot of help to be made. And I got to tell you, the podcast community, at least this one, the folksy, making a living, doing what they love kind of community, like the pod, they like, Podfest, we call them the pod fam, our pod fam. They're great. They're all here to help. There's there's not like a competition there. It's really, everybody's there to make everybody else successful. And I said this at the beginning, and I'll say this again at the end: Start ugly. Okay. This is actually the title of a book of the founder of Podfest. He wrote a book. You can see it on Amazon if you want. It's called Start Ugly. And it really is about, just do it. Just get started. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to sound great. It doesn't have to have, the best quality sound. But start out, start it, do it, get comfortable being behind the microphone, get comfortable being behind the camera. And then your show will just grow. And then once you get comfortable, you'll be surprised how easy this becomes. How, when we first started, we did have scripts and we had notes and everything like that. And now I kid you not, sometimes I'll say, all right, episode time. And within 20 minutes, everybody's got their research done and we just sit down and we hit the button and we record an episode. And it sounds like, like we spent hours and hours prepping for it. Not all the time. I wish I could say that. I wish I could say that we always sound professional, but our podcast is, we want our podcast here at the library to not just be about the library. We make it a little bit about ourselves and our personalities, because we definitely have these unique personalities, but we gel really well. The three of us, it's myself, it's Sarah, it's Nicole. We gel really well and we have a lot of fun. We make fun of each other. We're kind of like a family. It's a really nice experience. And when you hear that, you kind of think about, oh, okay. It's not just about the books and the music we're talking about. It's also about what we have to say about it. And what's nice about us having these diverse viewpoints is that you'll listen as a listener and say, you know what, I'm always behind Sal and I like his ideas and I like the movies he likes and such. And then you'll have someone else that says, no, I'm a Sarah person or I'm a Nicole person. Or, so you get that kind of thing. So definitely bring your personality to your podcast. That's what people listen to podcasts for, because they want to find other people that they can relate to and they can enjoy. So, if you're going to have an educational podcast that's bringing people to your business, that's bringing people to your services, that's driving people, imagine your podcast is you reaching your hand out to have them shake it and say, hi, my name is Sal. This is my business. This is what I do. I'm not going to sell you today. I just want to tell you how I can help. And this is how I can help other people. This is what I'm interested in. And that's how you can build your business. That's how you can, build your podcast. So I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. Please subscribe. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's mcpl.tv. You can go to mcplpodcast.com. Subscribe, put us on your feed, listen to us. Even if you're not a patron of our library, we talk about things that are available at your local library. We talk about a lot of streaming services. We talk about a lot of movies, a lot of music, books, food, the weather, stuff like that. So we enjoy it. So, and also my email address is here. We here at the Miller Center are here for you to build your business. Okay. It's not just about podcasting. So we have databases that you can use to do industry research, statistical research, demographics, build potential customer lists, all that kind of stuff. And I greatly appreciate Suffolk, the EAC, and having us out to speak to you all and to talk about the things that we do. And thank you, Kenya, and everybody there and at the program, the entrepreneur program.
You're welcome, Sal.
So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You just
None
put
in the
that,
chat.
yeah, just either put that in the chat or the Q&A. And it's okay if you don't have questions now. Again, my email address is devincenzo@mcplibrary.org.
There's one.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay.
This was great.
Okay, yeah. So there's the podcast. Why don't you guys take that down? Investigativepoetics.com. Very good. Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. I'm gonna check that out myself. And see, this is the other thing that's nice about going to conferences and everything like that, is that you meet other podcasters and they're gonna, you know, if you give them your card with your podcast link on it, they'll subscribe and they'll listen. Like I said, we get a nice bump, get a beautiful bump after going to conferences or doing networking events or something like that. So definitely. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, thank you. This is great. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And it's all, you know, it could be all overwhelming initially at the beginning. But once you do it, after a while, it becomes second nature. And you'll be surprised how well you sound after 6 months of just doing it. Because it's a practice, you know, you practice makes perfect.
And while we're waiting on questions, I just wanted to announce that next week in the webinar series, we will be holding our Access to Capital webinar. The presentation will be from a non-traditional lender. Join us, learn about how you can get financing for your business. You're welcome. Thank you all for coming out. If there's no other questions, I don't see anything in the Q&A or the chat. Jay, is there anything on Facebook?
Not yet.
Okay. So
And
we
also
have,
they can talk also.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll give them a few more minutes to either raise their hand or put the questions in the chat.
And definitely go online and go to the podcast directories and search for podcasts similar to yours. Try not to listen too much to them because you don't want to like subconsciously copy what they're doing, but just kind of get an idea what people are talking about and how they do it and come up with a better way of getting that type of podcast to be your podcast.
Okay, so Sal, I guess we'll wrap it up for this evening.
Very good.
I do want to thank everyone for joining us, and I want to thank Sal with the Miller Business Center at the Miller Country Public Library for doing this presentation for us again. This is a growing skill or craft most business owners are adapting to, like Sal says, and we want all the entrepreneurs to take advantage of all the new tools that'll help expand or grow their business and making more money, right? The goal to end up making more money.
Definitely.
Again, look out for the registration link for next week's webinar, and I look forward to seeing everyone then. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You're welcome. You too, Sal.